Hello there, and welcome to Murder Most British. I'm Zach.
Hi, welcome guys. I'm Rachel.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Ho, ho, ho.
I should be saying Merry Christmas. You should say Happy Holidays.
Well, you guys say Happy Christmas.
Yeah, or Merry.
I usually hear people just saying Happy Christmas. It's Merry Christmas.
Well, I say Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Well, that's my influence. Just like I keep getting you to say tomato.
No, I have to correct myself. If I say anything how Americans say it, I'm so compelled to correct myself. It's crazy.
Like, no,
it's not tomato, it's tomato. Smack my hand.
Well, yeah, because this one's coming out on Christmas Eve, and so from the top,
this is a Christmas related case, isn't it?
Yeah. So hopefully everybody have a great Christmas and a Happy New Year. But we do have an episode coming out on New Year's Eve, so look out for that one.
Yeah, well, before we begin, just a small request from us.
If you enjoy listening to our true crime stories, please give us a like, a follow, and a 5-star rating. Also, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Murder Most British and on Facebook at MMB Podcast.
You can also join us in the public crypt chat, our free Discord channel, where you can talk about cases, share theories, and read the latest news from the archive.
Your support helps the archive grow and ensures no story is ever forgotten. Tonight's story, it includes a brutal killing at Christmas time and the forensic work that followed, and then also an execution. So some listeners may find parts of this account distressing, so please take care while listening.
Now let's get to the story.
Christmas Day, 1909. Holyhead lies beneath a hard frost, the harbour lights winking like distant candles. Coal smoke drifts over the narrow streets, and from the chapels of Newry Street comes the steady murmur of hymn and prayer. Out on the edge of town, the wind moves through fields glazed with ice, carrying the sound of the sea against the breakwater. By the time dawn returns, the quiet will have been broken. A walk through the winter dark will go unfinished, and the frost that settled so gently over Holyhead will bear marks in it was never meant to hold. This is the story of Gwen Ellen Jones, and of how one peaceful Christmas night in a coastal town became the beginning of a case that would echo far beyond Holyhead, all the way to the last execution in a Carnarvon jail.
Gwen Ellen Jones was born in 1874 in the slate mining town of, you're going to have to help me out with this one, Zach, because it's Welsh and I'd struggle.
It is a beautiful Welsh name, yes. Blaenau Festiniog. I do believe.
Did we use that and wasn't that in another case that we done?
Yeah, I believe it was the Leanne Sabine, I believe it was.
That's the one. Yeah. The youngest daughter of John and Jane Parry. An older sister, also named Gwen, had died at the age of 10, and the new baby was given her name in remembrance.
That's beautiful.
It's a very sweet thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like where one life ends, you've got another life. Mm. Yeah, it's really sweet. Life in the quarry districts were hard and often short, and Gwen grew up in a family where grief and heavy work were simply part of the day-to-day.
In the 1890s, that fragile stability broke. Gwen's mother, Jane, died. Her father, John, aging and in poor health, moved the family east to Llŷrfyrfecyn. Hopefully I got that.
They are really tricky
that's a tough
to
one.
Say, especially if obviously you're not speaking it on a regular basis. A lot of Welsh words are pretty tricky.
Yeah, I think once you get like the hang of it, But anyways, that's where he found lighter work as a laborer in the stone quarry. The scenery changed from slate valleys to shoreline, but the money didn't quite improve that much.
In 1898, Gwen married Maurice Jones, a quarry labourer about 20 years older than she was. They settled at 4 Tanablanc in Llŷrfyrfecyn.
Yep. Close enough, I think.
I'll practice. I'll keep practicing all these Welsh towns and places, which was a cramped 3-room cottage that soon filled up. John Parry moved in, So did Gwen's younger sister Jane. To keep everyone fed, Gwen took in 2 lodgers. It was crowded, noisy and poor, but by all accounts she was the one holding the household together.
Around 1900, she took on even more. Gwen adopted a 2-year-old girl named Gladys. Well, it is spelled Gwadys. So just a different way of spelling it, I guess. But if I got it wrong, sorry. She was born in Llanrwst, a workhouse, and abandoned by her mother. Bringing another mouth into the house already struggling was a serious decision. But Gwen did it anyways. Gladys grew up calling her mother, and everything in the surviving record suggests Gwen treated her as exactly that.
In 1902, a new name entered the story, William Murphy. He started bringing his wash into the house, a powerfully built, well-travelled man who had served with the East Lancashire Regiment in India and South Africa, and later with the Royal Anglesey Royal Engineers. People who knew him described 2 sides, the joker who let himself be tied with ropes for May Day sport, and the man no one wanted to cross when he had been drinking.
No. One of the, like an angry drunk.
Like Jekyll and Hyde kind of character.
Yeah, that's not a good combination there. Well, an affair began between Gwen and Murphy. We don't know precisely when, but we do know what followed. The 19th of January, 1903, Gwen gave birth to a son, William John. Morris Jones eventually registered the child as his own, but the timing and later testimony strongly suggested Murphy was the father. The delay in registration became a point of gossip, one more sign that the marriage and Gwen's reputation were under strain.
After that, the pattern of Gwen's life changed sharply. Murphy grew possessive and violent. Her father later testified that Murphy had beaten her black and blue. There were accounts of him cutting her shoes off with a knife, threatening her with that knife, kicking her, and attacking her in the street. She left him more than once, retreating to her father's cottage in Bethesda or to cheap lodgings in Holyhead. But poverty, scandal, and fear kept pulling her back into his orbit.
Close to the end of the decade, Gwen's world had narrowed. She rented a top-floor room in a common lodging house at 51 Baker Street in Holyhead, crowded, poor, and known locally for its roughness. She moved between there and 21 K-Star in Bethesda, where her father now lived. Her children were sometimes with her, sometimes with him, sometimes left in the reluctant care of others. Newspapers began to label her a hawker or beggar, a neat way of ignoring the circumstances that had pushed her there.
Oh, we had hawkers in our family, on my side of the family.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like,
I mean,
to be able to go back and see all that.
Yeah, you see, I never thought, when they say, oh, beggar, and I think, well, hang on a minute.
That's not very nice.
Hawkers are like people that sell shit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like selling wares and whatnot. Right.
Pretty much, I guess.
Yeah.
I'd have to look that up, but...
Yeah, it is, yeah. I think they sell sort of knickknacks, really, and stuff for the house. But yeah, in 1909, while Murphy was away working in Yorkshire, Gwen tried to break away properly. She began living with another labourer, Robert Jones. Their arrangement seems to have been one of survival rather than romance, a way for her to manage without Murphy's money or control. But 2 weeks or so before Christmas, Murphy went looking for her. He told her father and even her adopted daughter that if he saw Gwen with another man, he would kill her.
No, that's not good. He's probably getting all liquored up and getting all fired up over it and stuff. And she's like, I don't want this. Yeah. I don't want you no more. And he just won't give up. And it's just a bad situation.
It's one of those, how serious do you take it? How serious does the father-in-law take his comment on that? Because a lot of people say things like that out of jest because they're like, oh, if I find him cheating or her cheating or, then I'd kill him. Do you know what I mean? Like, a lot of the times people do say that sort of stuff in jest, but...
Yeah, not really meaning that they'll kill him, but they're just like, they're going to pay for that.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
Give them what for because they were out doing
really
all
kind
that.
of confront them and be like, how dare you sort of thing.
Yeah.
Not follow through with that actual threat. But I think we're going to find out.
Yeah, well, soon after he turned up in Holyhead, he was lodging at 40 Baker Street, just doors away from where Gwen sometimes stayed. Witnesses later recalled him beating her in the street, threatening her with a knife and a rope, and telling people she would get one or the other if she didn't go away with him. One man remembered him saying, quote, "She would not live to eat her Christmas dinner."
Damn.
That's pretty drastic, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty harsh.
And pretty this is where you'd be like, we need to go to the police, but I'd say probably back then, they're not going to be able to do a whole lot. They would just be like, tell him to, move on, buddy.
Yeah. Well, Holyhead in December 1909 was a town of transients. Ferries to Ireland, casual labour packed lodging houses along streets like Baker Street and Newry Street. That's where Gwen spent her last weeks, sometimes with Murphy, sometimes trying to avoid him, always balancing on the thin line between escape and sheer necessity.
On Christmas Day, Gwen spent the evening drinking, first at a pub near the station with her friend Lizzie Jones, then at the Bardsley Island Inn. Outside that second pub, at about 8:30, Murphy appeared. He asked Gwen to walk with him. Lizzie moved to go with them, but Murphy stopped her, saying he wanted to see Gwen alone. The two of them set off together up Newry Street, singing as they went. It was the last time anyone saw Gwen alive.
Rain had soaked Gwen's clothes. She'd stumbled as they walked. In her drunkenness, she told Murphy that she liked him, remembering perhaps the early days of their affair. She still wore her hat and the little boa around her neck. Whatever fragile peace existed between them, on that walk ended somewhere in the darkness beyond Newry Street.
No witness reliably saw her after that. There was no confirmed sighting of her crossing the field, no constable reporting a cry he could pinpoint, no neighbor could say she came home safely. What is certain is that she never returned to her lodgings.
In that frost-covered field, the truth of the night emerged. The quiet of Holyhead was broken, and Gwen Ellen Jones, a woman who had lived so much of her life on the margins, was suddenly at the centre of a tragedy the whole town would have to face.
Damn, that's rough. Like, you're just having a good time at Christmas, and then he comes back, and you're intoxicated, and you're like, oh, I remember the good times, and
I think we've all been there, here and there.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I remember the good times we had, and I wish we could go back to that and stop all this fighting and all this, and then he just snaps on her.
Definitely sounds like a toxic relationship, sort of, but not always. Obviously, she was pulled back, on occasions for the good times, because the good times have brought her back. And, I think we have all tried many a times to try and make things work. And
yeah, you're trying to salvage what you had from that relationship and those good memories.
Yeah.
And you should have just left.
But she's got to remember, obviously, the controlling behaviours and things like that. It's not all been good.
And all the physical abuse and that.
But then I think, obviously, this is back in 1909. Nowadays we have more so of like coercive behaviours and things like that is a little bit more noticeable. So people are a little bit more aware nowadays, I think.
Yeah, and helping women in trouble and stuff like that to get away from these kind of guys. So, but on Boxing Day, that broke slowly over Holyhead, frost clinging to the rooftops as pale light crept across the harbour. The town was still heavy with the quiet fatigue of Christmas when two residents, crossing the field between Newry Street on their way to fetch coal, noticed something laying near the hedgerow. At first they took it for a bundle of clothing, or perhaps someone sleeping off the holiday drink. But even from a distance the shape looked wrong. They stopped, moved closer, and saw it more clearly. A body laying partly in the ditch, motionless in the frost.
A neighbour was fetched and the police were summoned at once. The first officer arrived carrying a lantern. When he lowered it toward the ground, the full scene emerged. A woman lying on her back, clothing wet, hat pushed aside, throat cut almost to severance. The frost around her was broken and churned into mud. Marks on the ground showed she had fought desperately. A trail of disturbed earth indicated she had been dragged a short distance. Something later confirmed by the police surgeon, who noted mud on her back and injuries consistent with her being pulled toward the ditch.
More officers arrived quickly, along with the police surgeon. He examined the body there in the field. Gwen had been dead several hours. The injuries were clear and brutal. Signs of manual strangulation, bruising to the neck, fractured cartilage, followed by a deep cut that had nearly severed the throat, sparing only the spine. Contemporary accounts noted that the wound had been inflicted with such force that the blade damaged the vertebrae. Her hands bore clear defensive injuries, broken nails, deep scratches, and bruising to her knuckles.
Terrible. This is brutal. Well, identification came sooner than expected. A neighbour recognised the hat and the little boa Gwen had been wearing earlier that evening, and another resident confirmed that the clothing matched her own. It was enough for police to believe that they knew who she was, but not enough for the official record.
In her pockets, they found a small purse, a pawn ticket, 2 letters, and a handkerchief. The letters included her father's address in Bethesda. Once they were dried and logged into the station, a telegram was sent to the Bethesda police to notify him. The officers then supervised the removal of the body from the field, noting the dragging marks beneath her before taking her to the mortuary room at the station.
Well, by the afternoon, Gwen's father had arrived in Holyhead. It fell to him to make formal identification, the one the coroner and the court would later rely on, confirming that the woman found in the frost behind Newry Street was indeed his daughter.
By mid-morning, Holyhead police began door-to-door inquiries along Newry Street, Wynn Street, and Baker Street. Witnesses described raised voices near the field shortly before midnight, though many assumed it was drunken quarreling from holiday drinkers. A sailor returning to his lodgings recalled seeing a lone woman in dark clothing near the meadow around 10:30. No one reported hearing footsteps returning from the field. The frost showed a clear line of footprints leading into the meadow, but no distinct trail coming back out.
As officers pieced together Gwen's last movements, one name surfaced repeatedly: William Murphy, a labourer lodging at 51 Baker Street. Several witnesses said he had been drinking heavily on Christmas night in the Railway Tavern, Liverpool Arms, and public houses near the docks, before leaving around 10 o'clock in the direction of Newry Street. Others spoke of the escalating violence of his relationship with Gwen, the threats he had made in the days before Christmas, and his declaration that she would get one or the other, the knife or the rope.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty clear sign for the police to go, I think we need to look into this guy.
Yeah, definitely a suspect.
Yeah, clear signs of violence, and probably on the record, they've probably been there, splitting up domestic, incidents and that.
Yeah, and it's not just one person saying that he said these type of stuff. They've got multiple sort of witnesses stating that he's said things like this.
Yeah,
so,
it's not just one busybody going, he was really mean or whatever. It's like a bunch of people going, this guy is bad news.
Yeah, it definitely corroborates the toxic type of relationship they had. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, they're in relationships, you're going to have fights, shouting or whatever. But when he's beating her black and blue and cutting her shoes off with a knife and just beating the shit out of her.
Yeah, if there's a history of violence, you definitely, it's the go-to. You're going to look at this person as a possible suspect. So,
well, when officers visited the lodging house, fellow residents confirmed that Murphy had returned in the early hours of the morning in a distressed and disheveled state. One lodger told police he saw Murphy washing himself repeatedly at the basin, muttering and in a dreadful way. Another described seeing his face scratched and swollen, marks later matched to the defensive wounds on Gwen's hands. Shortly after washing, Murphy left again. By the time police began searching the docks, the railway line, and the main roads east, he had disappeared.
But not for long. That afternoon, on Boxing Day, the front door of Holyhead police station opened and a man walked in, hatless, pale, shaking. Constable Hughes, on duty at the desk, later recorded his arrival in the station journal. Before any question was put to him, the man spoke.
I did it. I killed the woman.
Asked where, he replied.
In the field by Newry Street.
Asked how.
I put my hands to her throat.
When pressed further, he added the same explanation he would repeat for days afterward.
Drink was in me.
Well, later that day, officers recorded another remark he had made after the killing. Said before any formal statement was taken, Murphy told them he was not sorry for it and glad that he had done it, adding that he would get a bit of rest now. It was a jarring contrast to the flat, tired answers he gave in the station.
That's crazy.
He was very sure of himself and confident in saying
You're like, yep,
that he did it. Handed himself in.
You're like, yep, I did it. I'm glad I did it. And he knows where he's going now. He's going straight to the hangman. Well, obviously, that man is William Murphy. Officers moved him into a side room. They noted the scratches on his face and neck, deep gouges consistent with what Dr. Owen would later describe as Gwen's desperate fight, and the dried blood on his clothing. When they searched him, they found only a few coins and a pawn ticket. The police later noted that Gwen also carried a pawn ticket, though the two were not identical, but consistent with the poverty they both lived in. He was cautioned and placed into the cell.
Word of the confession spread quickly. By early evening, a lot of townspeople had gathered outside the station. Some saw the surrender as grim confirmation of what they had already believed. Others wondered why Murphy had given himself up so abruptly. But contemporary papers noted that voluntary surrender was not uncommon in rural murder cases at the time, particularly when the suspect feared being hunted down or believed a confession might weigh in his favour.
Well, inside the station, Murphy grew quiet. He asked for writing materials and produced a short statement. I done a wicked thing. May the Lord have mercy. The next morning, he appeared before the Holyhead Police Court. Reporters described him standing very still, head bowed, hands clasped, replying in a low voice when the charge of willful murder was read aloud. Quote, yes, I done it. He was remanded to Carnarvon Jail to await the winter assizes. Assizes back then was like a Crown Court, before Crown Court was established in the 1970s.
Yeah. When he was escorted to the train for the journey east, several townspeople stood silently along the narrow street outside the station. According to the officers who travelled with him, Murphy spoke very little. What he did say, over and over, with some variation of the same admission, that he had killed her and that drink had driven him to it.
In January 1910, it opened hard and white across Anglesey. Snow lay over Beaumaris, glazing the roofs that sloped toward the courthouse. The winter assizes convened under Mr. Justice Phillimore, newly arrived from London. On the docket were routine cases of petty theft and assault, but dominating that list was the most serious charge the court heard, R. v. William Murphy, accused of the willful murder of Gwen Ellen Jones on Christmas night.
Reporters travelled in from Bangor, Carnarvon, Liverpool and even Manchester. Newspapers described Beaumaris as a town filled with solemn expectation. Crowds gathered long before the doors opened. Women in shawls waited at the gates. Several men climbed through the windows to secure a view inside the courtroom. When court officials ordered the women out, warning that, quote, disgusting details would be heard, the decision caused what papers called, quote, great disorder and commotion. Outside, the crowd surged so violently that several small children were injured. The press later reported police had as much as they could do to keep the mob from attacking Murphy.
That's like it is now. It hasn't really changed, but it's all on TV.
Yeah.
You know, look at the OJ trial. Good God, that was an event. Everybody was watching it.
That was a big trial, though. That was a big interest in that trial.
Yeah. And then just recently with Diddy, man, so many people were watching that. And then the live tweets from the court as it's going.
Yeah, I followed that case.
Yeah. Everybody did.
Thing is, I think, even if there's a police van that drives past, I think people do still, follow it basically. And, are watching and kind of shouting stuff and,
But even you're just kind of, sometimes, like me, I was just like, you were in it with Diddy and that. I was kind of peripheral. I was like getting, a little bit of updates. I was like, oh, what, I'm interested, But even, I wasn't that.
Yeah, invested.
I wasn't that invested in it, but I was still curious. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these people, I think, were just really curious and like, whoa, he killed a lady on Christmas Day, that's crazy. Almost cut her head off, and it's also a sort of a sick thing as well. It's entertainment.
Yeah.
Especially back then, they didn't have TV and all that. It was like, oh, wow, something crazy fucking happened.
Mm-hmm. I think it's just human nature as well, isn't it? Just to kind of be, you want to know what's happened. You're very curious to know details about what happened to this, why did it happen? And then obviously making sure that you see that the justice has been done, so.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's another thing is, did they get it right?
Yeah.
Us armchair detectives or armchair prosecutors, they're like, well, they should have done this or that. It's one of those weird things. So Murphy was brought from Carnarvon jail wearing a dark suit, his collar neatly pressed. He stood in the dock pale and expressionless, hands clasped in front of him. Reporters noted the reaction from the gallery, a burst of loud hissing as he entered the courtroom. One newspaper claimed he answered it with, quote, a grin, like a villain in a Victorian melodrama, a gesture that unsettled even the court officials.
For the Crown, Mr. Trevor Lloyd opened the case in a slow, deliberate sweep. He reminded the jury that Murphy and Gwen had been seen together shortly before her death on Christmas night. He detailed the injuries found on her body, the clear signs of manual strangulation and the deep knife wound that has severed nearly everything except the spinal column. He pointed to witnesses who saw Murphy returning to Baker Street in the early hours with torn clothing and to the confession that he gave the following afternoon. A confession that matched the medical findings precisely. Lloyd also highlighted the threats Murphy had made in the days before Christmas, heard by several people, warning that if Gwen lived with another man, he would kill her.
Civilian witnesses came next. The men who found Gwen's body described its position in the ditch and the terrible state of her throat. A neighbor confirmed her clothing, but the most significant civilian testimony came from the Holyhead residents who had witnessed Murphy's behavior in the days before the murder.
Lizzie Jones, Gwen's friend, testified that Murphy had repeatedly threatened Gwen, even showing her a knife and warning she would get one or the other if she refused to go with him. During her testimony, Murphy shouted across the courtroom,
"That's the woman that caused her death."
He pointed at Lizzie and continued,
"I'd knowed she'd been a bad 'un, and when I saw her with this 'un, I'd know she was worse."
Lizzie shouted back, "You are a liar, and hanging is too good for you."
That must have been pretty disruptive in the courtroom. Like, they're like, whoa, settle down now.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe, like, they probably say that now, but they probably just left a little bit of ruckus and was like, order, like screaming. You know what I mean?
Another witness, John Griffiths, testified that on the 22nd of December, 3 days before the murder, Murphy had beaten Gwen, quote, a thrashing, struck her on the nose and told him directly, "I will do for her if I can't get her away from that old man." He also recalled Murphy saying Gwen, quote, would not live to eat her Christmas dinner. This testimony was crucial in establishing premeditation. Murphy's own adoptive daughter, 11-year-old Gladys, was forced to testify. Newspapers described her breaking down in tears in front of the packed courtroom.
Bless her.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's not ideally not a place for a young child to have to go through all of that. And
I think they had enough to get to convict him, obviously, and he's confessed that he did it. I don't see why they really had to get her up there to say anything.
Quite tragic. I mean, at the end of the day, it was his daughter. So,
well, adoptive daughter. But it's one of those things where she's already probably traumatized anyways from the years of their fighting and him abusing Gwen.
And they're losing them both.
And then they're both gone now.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Very traumatic for a child. Police witnesses followed. Detective Inspector Williams read from his notebook the exact words of Murphy's confession at the Holyhead police station. Under cross-examination, he insisted no threat or inducement was used. Another officer testified that in the days before the murder, Murphy had told neighbours, "You've seen the last of Gwen," a threat now understood as part of the pattern of intimidation leading up to Christmas. Dr. Owen, the police surgeon, provided the most harrowing evidence. He described bruising consistent with manual strangulation, a violent struggle and a throat wound 5 inches across, severing everything but the vertebrae. He explained that the wound had been widened by hand. One woman in the gallery fainted during his testimony.
Oh, gosh, that's brutal.
It's very squeamy.
Whoa. Ooh, Jesus.
Widened by hand. I mean,
the cut itself is bad enough, but did you really need to get your fingers in there and pull it,
Yeah, because if, he's obviously tried to strangle her prior to using the knife. Because why would you, if you've used a knife and caused such a wound, would you then go and try and strangle, So he's clearly not trying to strangle her after the wound.
Just a fit of rage of trying to pull her apart.
God knows.
That's crazy.
God knows. But that is gruesome. I'm not surprised the lady fainted.
Well, then came the physical exhibits, the pieces of evidence carried from the field behind Newry Street to the courtroom in Beaumaris. One by one, officers laid them out before the jury. The clasp knife recovered from Murphy, the torn cuff from his shirt, the small items taken from Gwen's pockets, and the pawn tickets found on each of them. Even the letters discovered tucked in her clothing were produced, and the ones police had used to contact her father on Boxing Day morning.
When it came time for the defence, there was almost nothing to say. Murphy's counsel called no witnesses. No alternative explanation was offered. Murphy stood only once. He rose slowly in the dock, bowed his head, and said,
"I'm guilty, my lord. I was drunk. I'm sorry for the poor woman."
Then he sat back down, eyes fixed on the floor, never once looking toward the gallery.
With the admission given so plainly, and with days of testimony supporting premeditation, the jury's task was brief. They retired at 3 o'clock, and by 3:03, they were back. The foreman spoke a single word: guilty.
Damn, 3 minutes?
I think it was just a formality. They had to leave and say, "Yep, everybody in agreement. Yep, rubber stamp."
3 minutes. That's
he pretty
crazy.
much admitted that he did it. So they just have to say, "Yes, the jury agreed." With all the testimony.
But then again, where's the time to just be like, right, has he been coerced into the, is he just saying this because of blah, blah, blah? There was just no.
Nah.
They've just literally took him saying, "Yep, I did it," as gospel, and
Well, look at with the gentleman from the Ardlamont mystery that we did. He's a gentleman. You take him at his word. Well, back then, it's more of you take someone at their word, and he's like, "Yeah, I did it," and they got all this evidence.
It's probably the mindset as well. Why would you say something? Say that you did something if you didn't. So
yeah.
But Justice Phillimore delivered the formal summation, quoted in the Bangor Mail. Quote, "This was a wicked and cruel deed, committed on the night of our Lord's Nativity, when the world should have been at peace. May the Almighty have mercy on your soul." The black cap was placed on his wig and sentence was passed. Death by hanging at Carnarvon Jail. Murphy showed no reaction as he was led out. Reporters noted several spectators crossing themselves as he left the dock.
That's one cool little thing that I learned is when you guys still had the death penalty. So whenever he was say, "You are now sentenced to death," so they would have to put a black cap or black cloth over the top of their head on the judge.
Oh, okay.
That's
So,
giving-
I didn't know if you meant on the prisoner's head.
No, on the judge. They put the black cap on or black cloth over their wig to then give the sentence of death. So black hood over the prisoner's face, like.
No, I never knew that.
Yeah. It
That's
was pretty cool.
interesting. Yeah. I mean, like, what was that symbolizing? Like, is that protecting them from...
Possibly. I didn't look into it that
from
much.
From the religious, like God's kind of...
passing judgment.
Yeah.
To kill a man.
Weird.
I'm guessing. Tell us in the comments.
Yeah, if you know why they used to do that, it'd be interesting to find out.
So execution morning was Tuesday, the 15th of February, 1910. Carnarvon awoke under snow, the Menai Strait muted and grey. The executioner, Henry Pierrepont, had arrived from Manchester the night before. As standard, he had taken Murphy's height, weight, and neck measurements and calculated a drop of 7 feet 9 inches.
Wow.
They had to be precise.
Wow.
Too long, they could drop too far and it could pop their head off.
Oh, lovely.
And if it wasn't long enough...
They hit the floor?
Because they wanted to get it to where when they drop, it breaks their neck and then they die. But if it's not long enough, it won't crack the neck and then they will just sit there and strangle.
So is it this time, 1910, like, was this where they done public hangings and stuff? Or was this like...
This was at the jail.
Yeah,
this was at the jail. And they... I can't remember. I did look it up, but I forgot now. Sorry. Like when they stopped really doing the public stuff.
Right, okay.
So let us know in the comments.
Yeah, so this guy, he was hung actually at the jail.
Yeah.
Away from sort of visitor or public. Well, at 8 a.m, the bell of St. Mary's tolled once. Murphy walked to the scaffold between the governor and the chaplain. Witnesses said he was calm, lips moving in prayer, and when the white hood was placed over his head, he spoke clearly. Quote,
Lord have mercy on me, and on the poor woman.
The lever was pulled. Death was instantaneous. The time of death was recorded at 8:02 a.m. His body was certified by the prison surgeon and buried in an unmarked grave inside the jail walls. The North Wales Chronicle printed a single line, quote, The execution was carried out this morning without incident. Murphy met his end calmly.
So, a bit of history, because I love a bit of history. Henry Pierrepont, who carried out Murphy's execution, later trained his brother, Thomas Pierrepont, who went on to execute Buck Ruxton in 1936. That's episode 3.
That's the case that we done, yeah.
Yep, that's our episode 3. If you haven't heard it, go back and get at that one. He executed him in 1936 at Strangeways. Henry's son, Albert Pierrepont, became the most famous British hangman of the 20th century. Together, the Pierreponts conducted hundreds of executions, quietly linking cases like William Murphy's back to Buck Ruxton through a single family line.
Wow.
Family business of executioners.
A bit like farmers, you train your kids to be like the next generation of farmers.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, he's training his family members to be executioners.
Yeah. Oh, he's like, hey, son.
Here's a good job for you.
Yeah. It paid well.
Yeah.
And they had to be good.
Well, back then, obviously, they had to have a good job in order to not live in poverty like, many people back in that time.
Yeah.
There was a lot of poverty. So, yeah.
But you also had to be really good at it. Because if you did stuff like it was too long and it popped his head off, or it wasn't long enough and he's just sitting there, struggling and like they did try to make it to where it hung them,
but it wasn't like full on torture.
Yeah, it wasn't full on torture.
Yeah.
But yeah, they had to be really, really good at it. And it was just a family business of executioners, baby.
I think also, it takes certain people to do it.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? You have to be strong people mentally to be able to even know that you're doing that to another being, I don't think I could actually pull a lever and hang somebody myself.
But it's also, but it's also a sense of justice. They are the end of the line for justice.
Yeah.
And someone has to do it, and they have to do it well. You can't just be any Joe off the street and be like, yeah, here's a rope, guys. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, let's get back to the story. In the days that followed, Carnarvon Jail fell quiet. Murphy's cell was stripped, his possessions destroyed. Those who followed the case did not forget its details. The struggle in the frost, the surrender in the station doorway, and the winter morning on which justice was carried out by the Menai Strait.
Justice, as the law understood it in 1910, was done, swift, final, and public. But the contradiction remained. A Christmas murder answered with a February execution on an equally frozen ground. Gwen Ellen Jones was laid to rest on the 29th of December 1909 in the mortuary cemetery at Maysavrid, just 4 days after her body was discovered. It was a quiet burial held before the public storm that would surround the case. The service was conducted by the retired Reverend David Powell Richards, who happened to be visiting the area for Christmas. No crowds gathered, no procession followed. Gwen was laid in an unmarked grave, and Holyhead did little to mark her passing. The final journey of a woman now at the center of a national headlines passed almost unnoticed.
That's pretty sad. Unmarked for her. Unmarked grave.
Well, they pretty much call her like a pauper's grave. Yeah. So it's just
she
sad.
Was obviously in poverty, so obviously they wouldn't have been able to, and maybe her family members didn't have the money to, kind of like a state funeral, I'm guessing, back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, they can only cover the grave digger to go out and dig the grave and put her in it, and put her to rest, but they didn't have much to do anything other than that.
In the weeks after Murphy's execution in February of 1910, attention shifted from Holyhead to the broader debate unfolding across Britain. The Liverpool Echo questioned the purpose of the gallows, arguing that the swiftness of justice consoles but does not reform. Letters to the editor revealed the moral split of Edwardian society, some calling for Christian mercy, others insisting that the scaffold was necessary for order. The Bangor Mail, reflecting a more conservative view, asserted that the execution had restored moral order to a town troubled by drink, instability, and transient labourers.
This debate echoed a wider unease. Britain in 1910 stood at the beginning of a long, slow shift in attitudes toward capital punishment. Murphy's case, a Christmas murder, a rapid confession, and an execution less than 8 weeks later, became one of the examples cited by ministers and commentators questioning whether a nation celebrating the Nativity should also perform executions within the same season.
Well, at Carnarvon Jail, the final rituals were stark. Murphy's cell was scrubbed. His few belongings were burned. The gallows, the old hanging tower, was dismantled later that same year, never to be used again. Records confirm he was the last man executed at Carnarvon Jail, closing a chapter of Welsh penal history stretching back generations. When the prison shut in 1921, the yard was cleared. Today, only a small plaque marks where the scaffold once stood.
Back in Holyhead, the physical traces vanished quickly. The field behind Newry Street, the quiet patch of ground that had held the frost and the struggle, was eventually built over. New housing covered the line of the old boundary. Gwen's father died a few years later. His name entered beneath hers in the parish ledger. The small, fragile family that had survived so much hardship simply disappeared into the archives. No memorials were raised. No annual services were kept. Only absence settled in.
Yet the story did not vanish. It lingered first in conversation, then in the town's small folklore. By the 1930s, children in Holyhead whispered about the Christmas ghost. A woman said to sing on stormy winter nights. One version claimed that if you walked along Newry Street after midnight mass and paused near the old field boundary, you might hear a woman's voice singing, "Abide with me." Some said the sound drifted from the sea. Others thought it came from the chapel steps. Even sceptical locals admitted the strange coincidence. That very hymn had been heard drifting from a tavern the night Gwen had died. And it was the hymn Murphy was reported to have hummed in his cell before dawn on the morning that he was hanged.
When folklorists collected oral histories in the 1970s, several versions of the tale resurfaced. Most residents described it as a haunting but reminder, a way of keeping memory of what the town once endured. She was a good woman, one elderly resident told them, and they said she still walks home from chapel when Christmas comes.
Modern Newry Street shows almost nothing of what happened there. It is now a row of houses with garden walls, wheelie bins and everyday noise. The meadow long since gone, but on old property maps the outline of the original boundary remains visible, a faint crooked line across the page marking where Gwen's final steps once fell. In 2009, a century after the murder, the local history group had placed a small metal plaque near the site of her former Holyhead lodgings in recognition of the life she lived. Not just the manner of her death, it simply reads, "In memory of Gwen Ellen Jones, 1874 to 1909.
Visitors pass it rarely. Yet each December, flowers appear at the cemetery wall in Holyhead, and a sprig of holly is sometimes laid by the plaque. No one announces it. No one claims credit. It simply happens, a quiet thread of remembrance woven through the town.
Seen from the harbour wall, Holyhead looks much as it did that winter. The chapel's still standing, the slate roofs leaning toward the sea, the salt wind moving through the alleys. The events of 1909 belong to a different world of policing, punishment and social judgment, yet their echo persists. Each retelling raises the same enduring questions: how a community balances justice with compassion, and why violence so often finds its moments in the hours meant for peace.
One later retelling closed with a line that feels like an epitaph for both of them. May she rest in peace, and may he find it. More than a century later, the sea still beats against the breakwater as it did that Christmas night. The harbor lights flicker through the mist, and the wind that moves over Holyhead in winter still seems to carry something of that night, a faint, unsettled note in the air, lingering where her footsteps ended.
Well, that was the story of the Holyhead Christmas murder.
And of Gwen Ellen Jones.
Ellen Jones.
Yeah.
Such a brutal, brutal killing.
Yeah, it was just crazy. And I think he just accepted it, But I do like that line where, may she rest in peace and may he find it. It sort of reminded me of the Green Mile when they do one of the executions. I do believe it was the Native American guy. And that little shit, Percy, is like, see you in hell, chief, and all that shit.
Yeah.
And the other prison guard comes over and he's like, what the fuck are you doing? He's square with the house now. He paid his debt. You leave him alone and let him be at peace, And I think that's a little bit, people want to dog on things and what, it's like, he paid his price with his life.
Yeah, and obviously if Christians believe, that there's a hell, he may even end up down there and
he'll
pay even more down there.
Well, I think that, he paid his due and obviously the chaplain was there when he was, maybe that they prayed together and for forgiveness and who knows what happens after that. But, I do hope they both found peace after all of this, but.
Yeah. It's just such a sad outcome to such a tragic, toxic relationship on and off.
But it also
for him to go that step too far.
Yeah, but it also mirrors things today. Like things have changed in the sense of we've got more support for women and but also there are some men that are abused as well.
Oh, of course, yeah. I think it's come to light more so after the most recent sort of years that there are men and boys that are abused as well. And it's nice to see, that they are stepping up and actually speaking out, because I think probably back in these days, it happened, to where men and boys were abused, but they never said anything, through shame or fear. And
There's more work to do, but I think that
there's always going to be work to do. But
it's going in the right direction.
Yeah, I definitely think nowadays there is a lot more support for people, humans, men and women and boys and girls,
Yeah, and I'd
always
say that
seek help. I say.
Yeah, and I'd say that anybody out there that you're having a problem like this or whatever, go get help. That it is not worth staying in something like that. Get some help. Get out of that situation.
And also just anything really, anything going on in your lives that is not necessarily making you happy. Seek some support. There's people out there that can sit, listen.
Yeah, there's no shame in it.
And help you to find solutions to making your lives feel a little bit better. So, yeah, you're never alone.
Yeah, there's no shame in going and seeking help and talking to someone. So,
but thanks for listening. It was a tragic story, but it was definitely, it was nice to talk about this case of Gwen and bring it back into modern day and just kind of inform everybody of her situation and keeping her memory alive, really.
And putting it out there for help.
Yeah.
For help for people like, hey, this was going on back then.
Yeah.
If you're going through this now, seek help.
Yeah, definitely.
If you'd like to support the work we do here in the archive, please take a moment to follow the show and leave us a 5-star rating. It really helps others discover the stories that we tell and keeps the archive growing. Sharing the podcast with someone who loves true crime also makes a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, most definitely. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Murder Most British and on Facebook at MMB Podcast. And if you want to chat with us or other listeners, come and join us in the Public Crypt, our free Discord space with case discussions, theories, and updates from the archive.
Everything you need, socials, Discord, and more is in the link tree below.
So until...
So wait. Have a happy, merry, whatever you want to say, Christmas.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays, happy, what is it, Hanukkah, is it? Is that a Christmas thing?
Yeah, just like everything.
Yeah.
If you're
have
whatever you're celebrating.
Have a lovely festive time and stay safe.
Yeah.
Stay curious, guys. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.